Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. Although, I don't know if you heard me read Chris Hayes' tweet. I was so grateful for about this cycle of Democrats under Biden, this freak out over terrible polling, followed by great, actual electoral results. And then we rinse, lather, and repeat again. We just continue our freak out, right?
Right. And I think the focus, I think Jay Rosen said recently something to the effect of we should focus on the stakes and not so much the odds. And that's kind of where I am with this election a year away. And I feel like the stakes couldn't be more catastrophic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm the don't get happy guy.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty good about how the election could turn out next year.
Well,
obviously that requires us to not get happy.
Yeah.
And so there's my conundrum.
Again, as we've been talking about already, prices way down, every barometer way better this Thanksgiving. He just brokered apparently a hostage, deal and a ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, the numbers everyone was freaking out is, people don't like his handling of the Middle East. And it's like, nobody likes war. It's never good news for anybody or anybody's numbers, but how it's Biden's fault. Yeah, Rude Pundit tweeted,
ridiculous.
I'm angry about how Joe Biden is handling Israel's war on Palestine, so I'm just going to let the guy who's promising to dismantle democracy and imprison people like me become president would be a pretty stupid way for the country to end. I mean...
Right.
Yeah.
And as though there was any question as to whether or not Joe Biden was negotiating for these hostages. Obviously, this is something that the president was actively engaged in.
Yeah.
And by every account, that's absolutely true. It's not like, that's what comes part and parcel with having competent leadership that's concerned about things like hostages rather than their own brittle ego and whatever
calling Hezbollah smart.
Whatever their long-term plan is for global dominance, whatever Donald Trump is motivated by. And so when we see actual competent leadership doing things like negotiating to free hostages,
thank you,
we're suddenly shocked as though, you mean he was actually doing? Of course he was doing that.
Made everything worse on every level, right? By supporting Netanyahu unconditionally, supporting the settlements, moving the embassy to Jerusalem with no concessions. I mean, he made it all of this, worse, and it just anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Well, in fact, Hal Sparks and I were talking on his show this week about the normalcy of Joe Biden and how much of a relief that should be, how much we should prioritize the notion of just the basic things like decency and competence. I mean, these are things that I think we lost sight of during Trump because it just wasn't there at all. And we need to reprioritize and look at leadership that can handle things like delicate hostage negotiations. And so that's super important. I mean, all the way down to things like pardoning the turkeys. That's normal president stuff that we really need to familiarize ourselves with again and prioritize that as in the status that it deserves in our minds. And I think if we can do that, I think we can right this ship a little bit.
We can be forgiven for having like 2016 acid flashbacks. Chris and Jody were just telling me that, Susan Sarandon just got dropped by her agency for anti-Semitism because she was at a rally in New York and said, I don't, in her tradition of being distinctly unhelpful, said what?
That Jews are finally getting a taste of the racism that Muslims have felt.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I've seen
if
people,
they haven't
go Hamas and blah, blah. Yes, and there's Jill Stein on cue, Putin's puppet. This is why I chose my, puppet. Putin.
Don't say that fast.
T-shirt today. Okay.
I don't know if I've said it on the show before, but it's this weird kind of brinkmanship with people like Jill Stein and RFK Jr. and some of these people who are deciding to run in the general election as a third-party candidate, where they think, okay, let's see if we can embellish our Q score. Let's see if we can embellish our clout in the political conversation without fully going over the line to implement fascism in this country, which is really what they're doing. They're saying, let's see how far we can go with this third-party challenge in the general election without fully tipping the scales into the realm of,
by the way,
electing Donald Trump and so on.
Thanks again, Susan Sarandon, for everything. So you're going to get the guy with the Muslim ban. You're going to help him get elected
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Right? The guy
Well,
with
that-
the internment camps and the deportation of 10 million people and, ejecting every Palestinian that is in America that's already here. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's insane.
And you know what? They understand those stakes. They get that. They know on some level. They may never admit it. Jill
Yeah.
Stein will never admit that in 2016, the votes that she got in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan,
Yeah.
if those votes had gone to Hillary Clinton, we would be in the tail end of Hillary Clinton's second term.
Oh, and we were
this
just
point.
vote shaming, Bob. We were vote shaming and fear mongering about Roe v. Wade. That would never happen. Oh my God, it would never be overturned. I mean,
Yeah, but
by the
they
way,
understand that. They know what they're doing here,
Yeah.
and yet they're doing it anyway, which is some form of brazen nonsense that it's really difficult to quantify how reckless they're being with these third party challenges, and so you got to wonder what their loyalty is in all of this,
Yeah.
and. I think they deserve a level of scorn that we quite honestly haven't reached yet. I know
Yeah.
we all
Oh no,
dislike
I'm just
Jill
getting warmed
Stein,
up.
but
Yeah.
yeah. She deserves more of our scorn, I
But
think.
you retweeted Trump's latest terrifying 2024 is our final battle. Bob, it's not a coincidence that it echoes the final solution, that he used the
Yeah.
word vermin right out of a Hitler speech. And you just said, do not sentence your fellow... Rachel Bittekoffer tweeted, do not sentence your fellow Americans, particularly the poor ones, the brown ones, the black ones, the gay ones, to life under Republican fascism. I mean, he literally... it's our final battle. We're going to finish the job once and for all, get rid of all these people. I mean, it just... If you are not alarmed yet, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing about what he's talking about there. It could obviously extend to people, just random people inside the United States being deported or being detained or what have you.
Yeah.
Primarily what he's talking about is this plan that's already underway. It's not something that's on paper or being discussed or a far left conspiracy theory or anything like that. Donald Trump is legitimately planning to fire 54,000 federal workers and replace all of them with loyalists and sycophants, people who will not challenge him.
And it's not just Trump.
Let's say,
Yeah.
let's just say he's elected next year, and 4 years later, it's time to have another election, and he loses, or even these are people who will make sure that he can stay in office. The entire plan to replace these federal workers is entirely about making sure there's no one in the way when he wants to become dictator for life. And that's exactly what his goal is.
And it's not just him. Ron Brownstein, the great LA Times writer out here, writes, Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, voiced support for revisiting Supreme Court decisions that struck down restrictions on the use of contraception, barred bans on gay sex, and legalized same-sex marriage, according to a CNN review of his prior public statements. I mean, religious theocracy is coming. Fascism is coming unless enough of us wake up, Bob.
And what we know is whenever there's religious theocracy, society breaks down. I mean, this has been something that has historical backing to it. I mean, we can look at the historical record and see nations that suddenly were overtaken by religious theocracy. Everything collapses. And the nefarious thing about the Republican form of religious theocracy that they want to implement here is that when things start to collapse, they'll just blame the Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the... That's the insane gaslighting aspect of all of this. When, a state, or in the worst case scenario, if the entire nation collapses economically, societally, then they'll say, well, it's the libtards, it's the Democrats who did this. That's their fault.
And they openly, I mean, Trump and Tucker Carlson, they openly cheer dictators, like you talked about in Argentina. They openly cheer autocracy and dictators. You said Argentina has 140% inflation, 40% live in poverty. Stupidly electing a goofball far-right libertarian will only make matters worse, a lot worse. Don't be like Argentina, America.
Don't. It's hilarious. We're time and time again.
Do cry for us, by the way, Argentina, if we do.
Yes. Well, it's so funny to me when gullible people, and quite honestly, a lot of gullible people from my generation, embrace this idea of Ayn Rand style libertarianism. It's really, libertarianism is Scientology for politics.
Yes.
That's how ridiculous it is. It never works. It's never worked. No one who's a libertarian can point to one functioning government that has endured the test of time under a libertarian regime.
Yeah, it's
It just
conservatives
hasn't
that want to
happened.
smoke pot. That's-
Libertarians live in a land of possibility.
Unicorns and rainbows?
Right. They never live in a land of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing you want to look up. There's this small town in New Hampshire called Grafton, and they once tried libertarianism, and everything descended into chaos.
Yeah.
They had a bear problem. Like the bears invaded the town, like black bears. And so the entire town was geared around, well, how do we get rid of the bears? I don't know. We can't do anything here because there's no government. There's no money because we
no stop signs, no stoplights. Go,
government's-
freedom.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most absurd thing in the world.
Yeah.
These people, it's like they read Ayn Rand when they're 14 years old, and then they never
Progress.
progress past that. It's like the next step in their learning never actually happens, and they're just stuck.
They're in the Peter
with the
Brady
14-year-old.
puberty,
They never quite changed their voice.
They never quite,
Oh yeah,
right.
yeah,
They just
yeah.
start stuck
I mean,
right
it's
there.
like my favorite band, Rush, did an album in 1976 called 2112,
Great
and it
record.
was inspired by the writing of Ayn Rand. You know, the great thing about Rush is they didn't stick with that idea.
No.
They evolved and
Yeah.
incorporated new ideas
Yeah,
into
yeah. Imagine
their
that.
lexicon, and it's
Yeah.
that's what more people should be doing in this
Yeah.
country.
Before we go, you tweeted there should be a national holiday for the Carters. The good they've given the world is beyond measure. Yeah, remember that? Remember when
Yeah.
we elected legitimately good humans that did good things for other humans? Huh.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that we need to deify in this country. And not just those of us who are Democrats. The entire country should revere the Carters for what they've given back. I assure you, Jimmy Carter wasn't going down a list of the people who were working at Habitat for Humanity and wondering, well, did they vote for me? Well, if they didn't, screw
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
No, this is an inherently good, nonpartisan couple that did put so much back into the world that we can't even begin to quantify as
Yeah,
far as
absolutely.
the generations of people that they helped.